I'm going to spend some time going through my creative project. I really want to have a plan for each project that I've got. So the first book that I have, which is a completed book, is called Project Girls. That's a YA dystopian that's sitting around 98,000 words. I originally wrote that around 2018. I did a lot of querying. I got probably the best feedback I've ever had on that one. I had quite a few full requests. It turned out that the rest of the novel didn't really live up to the beginning, which deep down I knew. And I knew if I was going to query that again or get anywhere with it, I was going to have to completely rewrite it, which in 2020 I did start the rewrite process. I rewrote from scratch about 95%. And so that took from 2020 to 2021, and then I completed it I think in the summer of 2021. I started querying a little bit after that, but at that point, after COVID, the querying process slowed down so much. I barely got a response on anything that I sent out. So I think around that time actually everything was in quite a bad place. It has become so much more difficult since COVID, or maybe it was just heading that way anyway. In 2018, or back then pre-COVID, you did tend to get like more responses, even just more rejections, more emails back, more easier closure. People did tend to get back when they said they were going to get back, and kind of after COVID you really get a lot of just nothing. Just no response. No response means no. So I gave up on querying that because, to be honest, I queried a lot, and I think what I'm going to do now, I'm still very proud of that book, and it's still my favourite thing that I've written. So I don't want to give up on it, I don't want to shelf it, but what I want to do is just be more selective and direct with who I'm querying with. I want to, it's a dystopian kind of around the topic of gender and feminism, so I want to try and narrow in on agents that would be specifically looking for that kind of thing. I think that's going to be my best route. So I'm not going to query widely, I'm going to query very specifically. So again, this will be something that will probably take a while, and there's always new agents coming up. I think that's what I've learned. Like, even though I queried quite heavily at a certain point, there are new agents arriving. I've noticed quite a lot of agents like breaking away from their agencies and starting their own agencies, so I'm going to try and take advantage of these situations when I see them, when I see someone new, when I see someone who has particular interest in this. So this is really just, I just want to keep my eyes open here, so I'm just going to write here querying selectively. I have, I think I've only got one query out just now. I found somebody who was very specifically interested in feminist stories, or things to do with gender, and I thought like she would be ideal, so I've sent a query to her, and I'm hopefully I think she did say she would send a response, so I'm in the waiting process for that. But yeah, I expect this kind of thing to take a while. I just don't want to give up on this book at this point because it is something I'm proud of. The next thing I wrote, and is a completed book, is my novel Project Dreamers, and that's an adult contemporary around 60,000 words, quite a short one. I wrote this in 2022, and if you've watched some of my other videos, I've been speaking recently about my mental health problems, particularly around OCD and maladaptive daydreaming. This was before I was diagnosed with OCD, and I was trying to make sense of my maladaptive daydreaming, and I wanted to write a book about a character going through this, and the idea is like they're in kind of group therapy with other people doing the daydreaming. The thing about maladaptive daydreaming, it's very isolating, so I wanted to write something with somebody in a group therapy setting, and they were all pursuing different ways that they could try and solve the problem. So my situation with this is that I'm a little bit concerned, does the tone work? I enjoy black humour, so there's some black humour in it, so you know, I've actually had good feedback on this from people who don't suffer with maladaptive daydreaming, but they've compared it to other addictions they've had, which has been really interesting for me actually. Like somebody, when they read it, they were like, oh, this was me like trying to stop smoking. So I think it's relatable in other areas, and I certainly didn't write it just with the idea it would be read by people with maladaptive daydreaming. I did want to write it for a wider audience, so that's what I'm not sure if the tone is right of it. So I think what my next steps are going to be on this, because I've had good feedback from a writing course I was on and from a critique partner I had, I feel quite positive about it. But what I would actually like to do is get more, again, this is about being more selective about where I want to go. So I think what I want to do is get some beta readers who do struggle with maladaptive daydreaming, and to see if the book is, you know, entertaining or interesting or somehow helpful for them. I find it very cathartic to write, even though, you know, it doesn't, this was before I was diagnosed with OCD, this was before I was getting a particular treatment. I was kind of giving quite basic information in this, and they were all listening to this therapist giving instructions about what you could do to help it. So it's certainly not a self-help book. It's not like a book to make people feel better. It was really a book about these characters going through this. So what I would like to do is get better readers, particularly who do maladaptive daydreaming, just to make sure it's not something that would have a negative impact on them if they were to read it, and like that they would find it as comforting, not as comforting because it's not it's not a feel-good book, but like as, I guess, you know, finding a book with characters who you relate to in some sense is what people are always looking for in books, and that's partly why I wrote this. So I just want to make sure people do feel like they relate to it. Obviously no book can accurately reflect like everybody's experiences with something, but it's just to see how that would be received. So that is my plan. I'm going to reach out for beta readers for maladaptive daydreaming. So the next 3 things I've got is 3 work in progress, 3 whips that are in various stages and have their own problems. And I think this is why I'm not really getting anywhere. So I've got my 2 completed books. I'm going to query one, I'm going to beta read the other. Now I've got the 3 projects that I've been working on and that are in various states. So Project Island, I think I started to write 2 years ago around nano time. I got to 10,000 words and then I felt stuck because I realised I'd made a mistake in the path that I went down. I basically like killed off one character when I should have killed off another, and it's going to take quite a lot to untangle that. So I think I got to this point where I was like, I can't write any further. I don't have the energy to edit right now. I was not really in the place to be writing anyway. I was not in a good headspace when I started writing this, and the thought of going back to a problem creative project was not what I needed at that time. So I'd left that for now, and I could actually tackle the problem now, but it's just whether I want to spend the time doing that or I want to work on the other things that I've got. So just now I've got to rewrite I don't know, actually it's a rewrite, it's just there's going to be changes in it that obviously are going to impact the way the story flows, but I partly don't know if I should just move on and take the story where I think it needs to go and then go back and fix it. That is the problem. That is the problem of first drafts. And you know, this is a typical problem as to why people give up on books. It's what I totally understand. You know, I'm amazed at what I've been able to complete because it can be so frustrating when you recognise the problem and you know how big it is. My book that I'm really proud of, Project Girls, I think I'm so proud of that because I recognised so much of it was going to need completely scrapped and rewritten, and I thought, this is such a big job, and of course it's tempting just to want to move on to something else, and the fact that I stuck with that one and rewrote it is what makes me so proud of it, really. So I definitely think the hard work and the struggles are what makes your art and your creativity feel worth it. Like if something is easy, then you know it's easy, like it doesn't matter. Like if you found something super easy to do, then you know there's not been any struggle, there's not been any to overcome. I think everything that's worthwhile is difficult and is challenging in its own way. So anyway, yes, I've got an issue with this one. I'll need to work through that, so I'm going to review the start and rewrite as necessary, or restructure. I don't know, it's such a restructuring, it's just rewrite. I'll just say rewrite beginning. Okay, the next one is the one that I started this year and I started discussing on my channel, which was the project that I wanted to work on this year. This is a project called Project Royals, which was a YA dystopian novel. I was enjoying writing this, although I did find it a struggle, and again, I don't know if that's just a general struggle with getting back into writing, which is a challenge. But I did begin to feel that maybe it was the project that was the problem, and that a different project wouldn't have been providing all the kind of creative resistance I was feeling on this one. The reason I wanted to work on a YA dystopian is because I had had such a good experience writing Project Girls, which was a YA dystopian, and I really enjoyed the problem solving that went on with that, and as I said, I am proud of that. So I thought the best thing to do was, when I'm trying to get back into writing, was to do a YA dystopian and kind of recreate that experience I went through with Project Girls. But you can't always recreate things, unfortunately, and if somebody you know, even like the most experienced writers sometimes say that every time they write a book it feels like they're writing a book for the first time, and I think that is true. I mean, I felt like I learned so much when I wrote Project Girls that I thought, oh, I can just take this into the next thing I write and I'm going to be amazing. I'm going to be such a pro. And then I start Project Royals, and of course everything is different. Like you might have learned more about structure, about character, about you know, the plot points, beats that are useful to hit or useful to at least know about. But there's just still so much that goes into creating a story, that even knowing these things, if you're not working on the right story, or if you haven't come up with the best ideas, and I do think ideas can take a while, so that's why, you know, when you write a first draft you shouldn't be so hard on yourself. But I did just kind of run into a bit of a problem with this one, and I had this feeling that I shouldn't be writing a YA dystopian right now, even though I'd had a good experience with that. I kept being drawn to writing an adult speculative, or an adult, I don't know if I would call it dystopian, it is more speculative, a more Black Mirror type strange novel, and I think it's more reflective of what I've been reading recently. You know, when I wrote my YA dystopian I was reading more YA, and now I'm reading less YA and I'm reading more kind of experimental novels, or more about, you know, characters in kind of strange scenarios. You know, I'm thinking of like Mona Awad's work, like Bunny, and who's the other writer? Melissa Broder, she's really interesting as well. So yeah, just kind of more strange, inventive work is what I feel I've been drawn to, and I think when you are reading a lot, that does inspire you and inspires your creativity in a certain way. And I think I have always been drawn to that kind of thing, and in a way the YA dystopian novel I wrote called Project Girls did also touch on something that was quite unusual and quite strange, and I don't think that Project Girls has like quite the angle that I think is interesting enough. I'm tempted to kind of shelve that for the moment. I'm at about 9,000 words there, and again I do have a problem here, which is where I think I've started in the wrong place anyway. So I would have a similar issue with the with Project Island, in that I would need to not start again, but kind of go back and revise a few things in order to feel I could move forward. This is not always the best thing to do. Sometimes the best thing to do is just to move forward and then go back and do things, but I do think if you have a massive plot hole or a massive problem, you will find it difficult to keep moving on, because you know what's you know what's sitting there at the beginning of the novel, and everything changes after that when you make a change. So yeah, do you know what, I'm going to put the same notes for this one. Review, add on new beginning, shelf. I'm going to shelf this for now. Or yeah, I think I'm probably not going to work on this just now, just because I do have the feeling that it's not the right project to be working on. So the thing that I've just started, I'm at a whopping 3,500 words. I just started this, I think, a couple of weeks ago, and I've just had like a few weekends of writing. But it has been a positive experience so far, and because I'm not writing something structured, I'm not worrying so much about the structure. I'm just going with the vibes and going with the feeling and the theme and the strangeness of it. So I've called that project Disorientation right now. That's because that's the sort of vibe of the beginning of it, just to be disorientated in a kind of new world, or the world is kind of slightly skewed. So that is sitting at 3,500 words, and I think I'm going to just continue on this, having no pressure in terms of structure right now, having no pressure in terms of what type of novel it needs to be or how I will shape it, but just to allow myself to write and enjoy writing. You know, I have this nice little strange idea, and I'm just going to follow it through the writing and not put too much pressure on me. I think, you know, with the other book I was working on, the dystopian novel, I really felt I needed to structure that in the right way in order for it to work, and I needed to solve a lot of problems, and sometimes this is what you feel like doing, and it's an amazing experience. I really enjoy solving plot problems, but other times, like, that's not where you need to be, and I think doing the solving plot problems is not a good thing for me right now, because right now I want to try and get into the flow of writing, and I want that flow experience, that mindfulness experience that comes from just being completely in a story and just writing, like, without the pressure. So I think that is my plan. So Project Girls, I'm going to query selectively. I've got one query out, and I think I'll make a separate video about that, and where I'm going to be looking specifically for people to query and just kind of talk about my experience with that. And then Project Dreamers, I'm going to reach out for beta readers who've experienced maladaptive daydreaming, who might want to read that book. If you're watching this and you're interested in that, please do feel free to get in touch with me, that would be great. And then my other two whips I'm going to leave just now, because they've got a lot of work to be done on them, and I'm going to move on to Project Disorientation. And just I want to just keep on writing that and see how I get on. I'll kind of do another update about that and do some videos about my work on that. I'm really hoping that this is the right project and I can get into a good flow with this and a good routine. Right now my routine is mostly writing at the weekends, so I'll see if that's, you know, how I'm going to continue on, or if I'm going to do any early mornings. Right now, because I have been focused a lot on my mental health, I've been really prioritising sleep. It's been really important for me just to get as much sleep as I can right now. So that's why I haven't been doing early mornings for my writing. I think you need to really figure out what's important at the particular time and what you're going through. I did used to get up early to do writing, but right now that doesn't make sense for me. So I'm going to continue to work at the weekend. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!